episode 170 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 28th of March 2022. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Howdy.
Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Hello.
Before we get into it, I just want to let people know that you can now support us with Ko-fi, I think that's how you say it, or Coffee, and LibrePay. Some people have asked for it before. There's no perks like the ad-free feed or anything like that with those, but there'll be links in the show notes anyway. So some people don't like Patreon and stuff, so now you've got different options. Let's do some news then. And the first one is excellent news about the Mars helicopter. The original mission was pretty basic. It was just kind of go up there, prove itself. Well, it's turned out to do such a good job of it that with some software updates, it's now massively exceeding any expectations that anyone had for it.
Yeah, this feels a bit like they've completed the game on easy and then have done the special key combination to enable like insane murder mode on the game. Because the next bit is filled with jagged cliffs, angled surfaces, projecting boulders, and sand-filled pockets. Cool.
Also, what I really like about NASA is that they always over-deliver. You know, they already set what sounds like really ambitious goals for a project, and we'd all be really happy with it, and isn't it incredible? And then they always seem to be able to say, well, we can do that, but also we've already done 21 flights, and now we're going to do a load more. They say they're going to hopefully extend it until September 2022 this year, so maybe a bit more as well.
I swear NASA just does this deliberately. They've done that with loads of rovers and stuff, haven't they, where they give it an operational lifetime, and then it ends up doing about 10 times that.
In fairness, though, they do owe us the bit where they mixed up metric and imperial measurements and went shooting into the atmosphere of Mars the last time. I was still bitter about that microphone that I could have heard it with. At least we finally have that now. But
I think what's smart about this one is that it did achieve its goals very quickly, and now they can have fun with it. They can risk sending an update which it doesn't come back from because it's done its job. And so now they can take a few more risks, like sending updates across however many miles it is to Mars is a very, very risky strategy to push updates if it's working fine. So rather than just say, you know what, we can continue to operate this thing, they're going, no, we're going to add new features to it. We're going to get it to work even harder, even longer. And if it goes wrong, we'll still have had, you know, our money's worth out of it. It's a really good strategy. I love it.
I think I said this last time, but what's great about this is that the better it does, the more likely we are to see Linux happen in future projects, because this was kind of the proof of concept of that. And NASA as an organization moves very slowly in terms of adopting new technologies. So you would imagine now that it's kind of on the radar of the people upstairs at NASA that Linux is a serious contender.
Yeah, and they've got a proven over-the-air update system, which is working really reliably. It's good news for Linux.
All right, more great news. The first Asahi Linux Alpha release is here.
that's great.
This, of course, is the Linux distro for M1 Macs that Phelim, you said wouldn't happen.
Brilliant.
No doubt you're going to trot out the same bollocks that you normally do about how Apple are going to shut this down any day now.
Oh, no. I hope they wait a bit longer until they've wasted even more time on it.
Well, Gary and I have been trying this, and we talked about it on Linux Downtime episode 43. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes, so do check that out if you want to hear the full experiences. But this is great. I mean, it is still a proof of concept at this point. It is very alpha. It's essentially Arch that's a little bit broken in terms of no sound and stuff. But it is a fantastic technical achievement.
Now, clarify this for me if you can. Do you require to leave macOS on that box?
Yes.
Forever, then?
That is my understanding, yes.
So we have to constantly ask Tim's permission to use this machine the way we want to, then?
Not necessarily. If you want to update the firmware and stuff, then yes, you have to boot back into macOS, but you have to leave enough macOS there to get it to boot into Linux, but then you can just, in theory, just turn it on, it boots straight into Linux, and then you just do your Linuxy stuff.
Okay.
After running Arch on an old MacBook for a long time, it was always useful regardless to have a working Mac OS for when things broke and be able to at least get to some kind of recovery mode. So even though it's a compromise, I think that's an okay compromise.
Yeah, and there's no hardware acceleration for the graphics, but thankfully the M1 chip is so fast that you don't really notice, even with GNOME. It got quite warm and the battery life was a bit shit, but all the GNOME animations were fine and stuff. It is really powerful hardware. So I don't know, Graham, you've got a really fancy one of these Macs. You haven't done this, I presume, because you don't want to risk it.
Not yet. I'm really open-minded. I would do it. I don't know if I've mentioned in the podcast before, but I have been using Linux on there almost exclusively under a VM. And I find the performance in a VM just incredible. And it works really well. And suspend and resume works. I always joke about it, but it works really well in the VM running on macOS. So I will do. I'll wait and see what happens. Graphics acceleration, I think I'd need. Even though I mostly use the command line, it's always nice to have that working smoothly. But it's an amazing project. I think it's incredible what they've been able to do.
I don't know why I'm so harsh against it, but I can understand if you need a Mac to use, particular software that you just can't get anywhere else. And that seems reasonable. If people are exclusively buying this to use for Linux, and there's so many other companies out there, the likes of, System 76 or Entroware, all these companies out there that, if you really want a Linux machine, you should really get one of those instead, I think. But yes, I do see the fact that if these are eventually going to go in landfill at some point in the future and there's already an OS to go on them, yeah, that's good. But I don't know, I guess I just feel a bit weird about it. And I'm miserable.
No, I do sympathise, Phelim. I do have lots of other Linux machines as well. I don't want to support Apple and say, but I just like the form factor and I like the performance and quality trade-offs.
But you have a legitimate use case because you have software you can't actually use anywhere else on it, right?
It is part of it, but I like the whole battery life and performance thing as well, and the screens I like and the touchpad.
Surely you can just bring an extension cord wherever you go and plug in. I mean, come on.
I don't feel great about it. But I try and compensate by supporting other Linux hardware manufacturers. To be honest, I also like having all of the things. Like I've got a Windows 10 machine as well. And I like seeing what everybody's doing just to be able to have an informed opinion on things.
Well, yeah, I bought my M1 MacBook Air, which turned out to be for a really good price, partially to try out Asahi Linux, but also just to get an idea of what these Macs are actually like and what macOS is like. And it turns out macOS is shit and I hate it, but the hardware is great. And it's become my sort of go-to machine for a couple of things. One of which is when I've finished working, if I've finished editing something, I turn my main PC off and I just sit with the Mac and watch YouTube on it. And I can take my headphones off because the speakers are so good on it. And it's nice to get an idea of what's going on in technology land and not just be, using some old ThinkPad with LibreBoot or CoreBoot or whatever. And just, this is from an XFCE user as well. You'd think I'd be into that, but
I don't think we have to go to extremes of using a LibreBoot ThinkPad from 1997. I wasn't quite going that far. But yeah, I mean, yes, I can see all those points are valid. And, I would never tell him to try and do what I do, because the reason is I wouldn't touch it because in case it's really nice and then I have to go back to my normal machine, I'm not going to live in that world. I can't accept it.
No, as a KDE user, you would not get on with macOS, man. No way.
No, probably not.
You can't configure anything hardly on it. You'd be like, where's the 10 options for this?
Oh, just stop. Lies.
No, just because you picked from those 10 or 50 options about 10 years ago and then never changed, you still made those choices once upon a time.
Oh, that's because they were valid.
Yeah, whereas good luck making any fucking choices on a macOS machine. Like I said, I hate that OS. I just do not get on with it. Just silly things like you can't plug it into an external monitor and only have the external monitor on unless the laptop's plugged into power. And I talked about it on Twitter as well. Do people who use Macs rename files obsessively, or are Apple just doing it wrong? Because that file manager, you press enter, it goes to rename it instead of opening it. Just everything that you do seems to want to fucking rename a file. Graham, do you know what I'm talking about here?
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about.
I thought he was going mad.
I mean, it's been that way for a long time. I guess I just accept it. And I don't use Finder very much. It's pretty awkward.
Presumably you can get other file managers if you pay for them.
Probably. I mean, the thing is, iTerm is a really great terminal emulator for macOS. I use that for mostly everything.
Right. So almost like the Linux solution to it.
Yeah, very much. The OS is just a functional shell. I think I said it before, I use it mostly for audio, but it's also nice to have a break from what I usually use, and I spend all day running KDE Neon, and it's nice if I want to do some music or something to just use something that isn't the same. And maybe I don't want to say it doesn't have the configuration options, but I don't need to. I don't need it to do anything other than, load a few screens up.
You're probably more app-centric then in that case. It's almost like a series of single-use functions, but just happen to be applications.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's true, yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to hear the speakers on your fancy MacBook Pro.
I don't think they're as good as the older MacBook Pro, which seem to have more bass response.
Right.
I've only got the 14-inch. I've just been away and used it as like our music system in the Airbnb we were staying in. And it was fine, but it wasn't as good as the old one. You'd still be better off with a £50 external Bluetooth speaker, I think, with reasonable bass.
Should you just arrange it on a series of open pint glasses and that'll boost it?
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Linode. Go to linode.com/late-night-linux to get started with $100 free credit. From their award-winning support offered 24/7 365 to every level of user, to ease of use and setup, it's clear why developers have been trusting Linode for projects both big and small since 2003. Deploy your entire application stack with Linode's one-click app marketplace, or build it all from scratch and manage everything yourself with supported centralized tools like Terraform. Linode offers great price-to-performance value for all compute instances, including GPUs, as well as block storage, Kubernetes, and more. Linode makes cloud computing fast, simple, and affordable, allowing you to focus on your projects, not your infrastructure. So go to linode.com/late-night-linux, create a free account with your Google or GitHub account or your email address, and you'll get $100 in credit. That's linode.com/late-night-linux. All right, well, we have to talk about this. There were a couple of posts on Reddit over the last couple of weeks about the interview process to go and work at Canonical, which is where you work, Graham, and where you used to work, Will. Canonical haven't confirmed or denied it, seemingly. I don't think Canonical have said anything publicly about it, but there's been enough people confirming it that I suspect that this is not false. And it is this gigantic fucking email asking all sorts of questions about, tell us about your high school experiences and tell us about what Canonical could do better and all this. And they ask you to write like half a book. And this is just like step 2 of 5 or 7 or something. It just seems like a nightmare to get a job there. I don't expect you to say much about this, perhaps diplomatic silence or whatever, but I thought we have to talk about this, even if it means just me and Phelim laugh at you two.
Well, I think the most common feedback that I've seen from mainly ex-Canonical people is that those people would never have got a job at Canonical if this was in place when they applied. That's a very common thread throughout. My reaction to this, and I left way after this was, way before this was introduced. My reaction to this is that, well, one, I think that the people behind this process are probably quite happy that it has stirred up some interest in the community and been rejected as a terrible idea, because they will see that as validation of keeping out the hoi polloi and only having their sort of precise, crisp hiring strategy. And my other reaction to this is that it seems strongly skewed to younger people. And I don't for a second believe that it's an ageism thing, but I do believe that it's a ploy to bring in people who have not been in the industry for very long, have not formed their own opinions, have not formed their own ways of doing things, and who are, moldable into some kind of corporate robot that Canonical wants them to be, so that they can tell them what to do and they will do it without question. That's my impression.
I mean, it is truly epic, epic proportion stuff here. And like things about high school, I think you're right. It is either they're looking for somebody young or somebody who was amazing in school, which certainly was not me. I just wouldn't have the inclination or effort to be putting into something like this. It's too much effort for too high a risk.
I don't know if I can comment directly on the Canonical side of this, but I will say that in general, I think hiring is broken everywhere. I don't know of a good example of what's been done. I mean, I've hired people, and I've hired people that have gone on to be really successful, but that was at a much smaller scale than what Canonical is trying to do. It's trying to hire for dozens of roles if you look at the website. But I've found almost the opposite to be true, in that trying to understand somebody at a personal level works, at least in my past. And for big companies, I don't know. I don't think I've seen anyone do it in a way that I think, yeah, that's a great idea. I think that works well.
Yeah, I did see a lot of discourse about how Facebook is no better than this and probably worse. But I just what kind of person would want to go through all that bullshit? Like, you're talking about a day's work to write this fucking half a book, like I said, just to get a job. Like, that's not how shit works.
I think perhaps that's the point, right? Is that they don't want chancers to just wang in a CV and then tie up engineering managers' time reviewing everybody who knows how to operate a computer and has put a resume together. And I do see quite a bit of value in that, having hired multiple people over my many years. I spend an inordinate amount of time filtering out all of the crap, and it's a really depressing, boring and wasteful job. So if you can stop those sorts of people applying, I think that's a good idea, frankly. But the fine line is, of course, that you end up alienating all the people who feel that this process is unfair or too much effort or just not worth going through in the first place. And you will, what do I know, but I think you'd lose quite a lot of really good candidates.
Yeah, especially as my understanding is there is a labour shortage generally in this industry. And so surely you want to make it a little bit easier to find people. It smacks of arrogance to me that you're expecting people to go through all of this when there's loads of jobs available.
See, the thing is, though, what happens when, of all the top 5-6 companies you want to work for are all kind of doing something similar? I mean, it might not be exactly the same, but it could be several days worth of interviews that you have to try and take time off of from your previous job and try and apply for. I mean, I don't think any of that is easy.
No, and what worries me with that is that you only get a certain kind of person who's capable of going through that. And that doesn't help with diversity or inclusivity, or it doesn't help you broaden the people that you want to work at the company if that's something that you're trying to do.
Well, yeah. And they talk about the university stuff as if you have to have a degree. And that's my understanding. To work at Canonical, you have to have a degree. Well, what kind of bullshit is that, man? Like, that cuts out basically all working class people in this country. And as a working class person, I find that to be discriminatory bullshit, quite frankly. And I'm not the kind of person who does well with having a job. I tend to say the odd word that you shouldn't, and it doesn't work out. But, I could probably do some shit for Canonical. And, I'm sick of them getting bashed, I tell you that much. And people saying Fedora's the new Ubuntu. Fuck off. No, it isn't. Come back to me when Fedora's got millions and millions of users silently just getting on with their job with it. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I could be a great advocate for them, but they're not going to hire me because I haven't even got a degree, and I am fucked if I'm writing an essay this long for them with all these stupid fucking questions. But maybe it is to keep the riffraff like me out.
And I think I always say this, but what I'd love to see is data. If this is something that Canonical's experimenting with, or if it's what other companies are experimenting with, it'd be great to see if it's effective, if it actually results in something that is a positive for the company and for solving the great hiring problem. Because who knows? I don't know. I don't have a better idea of how to filter out people or find the best candidates, other than spending even more time on a one-to-one basis with everybody who applies.
My view is that a covering letter is generally a good idea. I think somebody who's willing to write a covering letter explaining why they want the role and how they're suitable for it is good enough. I don't think you need 50 pages of exams to do that.
Yeah, I think a good portfolio on the likes of GitHub or GitLab, products that you're involved in, all those sorts of things, I think that's the best way to get involved and let people see who you really are.
Yeah, well, looking at Glassdoor, it looks like Canonical's a pretty cool place to work, so it's obviously worth going through all this. Well, there's going to be an Ubuntu desktop team in Indaba on April the 22nd, so in a few weeks from now. And Mark Shuttleworth is going to be one of the guests on that. It's Indieber's like a Q&A session type thing. It's a live stream where you can ask him questions, and also some other people at Canonical. And you can submit your questions in advance, or I think you can turn up. So maybe someone will ask him, hey, Mark, what's with that hiring thing? And maybe he can clarify it. But we'll have to see about that one. But I'll put a link to the thread on the Ubuntu discourse about that with all the details, so you can join in and make sure you stick to the code of conduct, though. Just a quick update on MDN+. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. This is Mozilla's WebDocs project. And Graham, you were very skeptical of their monetization strategy, but I think you have to eat your words. I think I was right.
Yes. I'm glad I'm wrong. I hope they continue to make the right decisions. And yes, so you're right. It doesn't look like they're putting things behind a paywall. They're adding to the experience for people who want to make a contribution and not holding back documentation from us all, which is a good thing.
Yeah, they're adding features like being able to view it offline, bookmark certain pages, watch for changes, all stuff that you could script yourself, but they're just making it much more convenient for people, and also creating a source of revenue to hopefully make it sustainable long term. Because that was something that came up last year, wasn't it? That we were worried it was going to just die. And I think this is a good solution to that.
Yeah, and if that +5 or support or 10 level that they have, if enough people, if they have a set band or they say past this point, we're now making a bit of profit. If that's a realistic sort of remuneration that they've got going on there, then yeah, that'd be fantastic if we could do that. Because we can't get the VPN over here anyway, I don't think. But looks like the certainly Ireland and I think even UK and a fair quantity of European countries are going to be able to do this, just not quite yet.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Entroware. Go to entroware.com. Entroware sells computers with Ubuntu and Ubuntu Mate pre-installed. They've got a range of desktops, laptops, and servers, and most parts are configurable, so you can pick the CPU, RAM, and storage that's right for you. If you can't find exactly what you want, then do contact them, and they'll work with you on a bespoke solution that's perfect for your needs. They ship to the UK, Republic of Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. And if you do buy one of their machines, there's a little drop-down at checkout, and you can select Late Night Linux, so they'll know that we sent you. So go to entroware.com for all your Linux computing needs. On to a bit of admin then, and thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's also Coffee and LibrePay now. You can go to latenightlinux.com/support for links to all of that. And remember, for $5 or more per month on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed. And that RSS feed is this show, Linux Downtime, and Linux After Dark, with occasional early releases if I get them edited quickly enough. And look out for Linux After Dark this week. There's a kind of medium-term review of the Framework laptop that Dalton has been daily driving. And it's mixed, let's just say. So that should come out in the next couple of days for patrons and on Sunday for everyone else. And if you want to get in contact with us, latenightlinux.com/contact. Let's do a quick KDE Corner then. Okular, first eco-certified. What's this?
So we brought up last time, this would be the goal of making more eco-certified software. And literally the day after we recorded, Okular was awarded by the Blue Angel group. So, yeah, Blue Angel, I think it's really not a great name, but maybe in German it sounds less odd.
Scientologist.
Blauengel, would it be?
It is, yeah. So I was just doing a bit of translating on the fly, thanks to our Canadians last episode.
That's even worse, Blau Angel.
But it was rewarded because of a transparency in energy and resource consumption, extending hardware life and enabling user autonomy. So, I mean, pretty much the FOSS ideals there, in fairness. But the thing that I thought was quite cool is the fact that Okular is in the Android, F-Droid, FlatHub, Snap, Microsoft Store, and then obviously in any main repo for any Linux OS. And I thought it was quite impressive that they're in all of those places.
What is Okular for the uninitiated?
Oh, it's a PDF viewer. I should have brought that up first. I mean, yes, it's not exactly cutting-edge software, but it is a very useful thing, so...
I seem to recall hearing that you can fill forms in and stuff properly.
Yeah, you can, and it's been getting better and better. And there's things like note adding and things like that. It's quite a decent PDF viewer. I used it actually only last week while I was traveling for my PDF tickets to load up the barcode. I just could not get my printer to fucking work. So I took the PDFs and said, oh, hell, I'll just risk it, because I've never used the QR code on it, or the sort of 2D barcode they have. And it worked like a charm. It was digital all the way. So
isn't K-Itinerary for that?
Yeah, but I don't think it actually stores the barcode. And I need to investigate it, because I want to log it as a feature request otherwise, because a lot of the flights you need to show your ticket barcode that comes in the email.
Yeah.
And while it can read all that, turn it into proper user information, I'm not 100% sure it can actually display it back out again.
It seems like a missed opportunity there.
I know.
All right, work on Qt 6 progresses.
Yeah, so about 2 weeks ago or so, Volker Kraus had a good article about the work that Frameworks has done to get ready for Qt 6 and to get Plasma 6 out as well. They're doing a lot of stuff like converting Plasma data engine stuff to normal QML modules. Plasma Components 2 is going over to Qt Quick, and they're getting all the progress for Plasma K-Wayland done as well. And with all these things that are coming together, the Kate team have also got their stuff compiling on Qt 6 now as well. I mean, they're not all perfect quite yet, but what they have been doing is they've been putting a lot of CI stuff for the frameworks work to happen, and they want to work on Windows next is one of their next targets that they're trying to do. So it's good to see that it's starting to progress towards Qt 6, because, yeah, I mean, Qt 5 is on sort of maintenance mode only, really.
Yeah, and the Qt company's not exactly making it easy these days with their licensing bullshit.
No, and I mean, I think it's probably fair. I mean, it'd be good to get everybody onto Qt 6 anyway. There's obviously improvements all the way. So as long as they don't make a bags of it as they're doing the upgrade, it should be all right.
All right, what's some KDE items of interest from Wikidata data reuse days?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful of a name, but we made note of that the last time, where some of the team that involved at K-Itinerary and various other apps were looking at all the government data that can be reused, and Wikidata sort of pools that all together. And there's various things that they've learned from that during the last 2 weeks that it was on. Things like language models. Scribe is one example of that, where they're talking about multiple languages for different second-level keyboards, if you've got different languages. And Sonnet, which is a Plasma Mobile virtual keyboard, could probably take a lot of use of some of that data. But there's also things like Open Food Facts, which is one of the sites too, where they could link to allergens of various foods, if you're intolerant or whatever, and things like different barcode standards. And they've got some other tooling that Wikidata have themselves, where they can look for conflicts of data or, incorrect data for people to work through. So I think there's loads of data that's available to us. Not everybody's always aware what's there. And yeah, I think they really help out trying to find that out. And I think there'll probably be some talks of that available on video that people could watch later on as well.
All right, and a couple of Nate's weekly updates you've linked to.
Yeah, there was just a couple. There was one new feature which I fell afoul of ages ago, which drove me mad. If I was on my laptop and I tipped my thumb off the touchpad, it would put the icon onto the desktop. KRunner has this feature where if you then start typing, it'll automatically open up with that data in there, and then I would hit enter. And then God knows what happened, about 15 different apps that open up for whatever that sentence happened to include, and it tried to make sense of. So there's a tick box coming to disable that, which would be quite good. And another thing is Discover is now going to have the Stallman-esque quote characters of risks of proprietary software around whatever you install. So, I mean, yes, maybe it's a good idea to highlight these things if people are installing the likes of Teams or whatever, that you highlight that too, because obviously Flatpak and Snap is available in there in Discover as well. So probably a good idea to highlight it, not make too big of a deal out of it. But yeah, it's there as well, like they have in F-Droid. He also highlights the bugs. So yeah, unfortunately I made the choice of checking before. So the good news was they were from 81 to 76. I checked and it's back up to 78. So clearly the 15-minute bugs is going down, but also back up each time. So depending on when you check, they're doing better. But they keep working on it. So that's good. And the last bit is the recent documents will be coming up to a free desktop standard, which means your GTK or GNOME apps will all sort of sync up with the proper data. So that's a good thing, sharing across the desktops.
He said through gritted teeth. Right, well, links to all that in the show notes then. We better get out of here. We'll be back next week when we'll have some discoveries and some of your feedback probably. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phenom.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.